I want to talk about my quilting journey and how I started quilting and why I am so passionate about it. So let's get started here. So 23 years ago is when I first found out about long arm quilting, quilt shows. I had no idea. I had no idea it was so big. And so I went to my first quilt show in Dallas, the Dallas Quilt Show, which is a pretty big show. And I was so inspired by all the quilts that were hanging. I was inspired by the piecing, the applique. I, I was definitely fascinated by the long arm quilting. I thought, how did they do that? I mean, to put a large quilt underneath your sewing machine, because I actually tried that once and I said, I'm never quilting another quilt. But I was so fascinated by it that I just kind of walked around the show looking, and they actually had long arm machines there. So I was able to kind of um, use them and see how they worked. Totally fascinated by them. I was fascinated by all the booths that were at the show, all the things that they had, the the tools, the patterns, the kits, the fabrics, just totally blew me away. And from that day forward, I I knew I wanted to get into quilting. So I could piece, um, but I was not a good piecer. I just did it like everybody. Well, I'm not going to say everybody, but for somebody that didn't have any classes on piecing, you just throw them together, throw those blocks together. And there's more to it than that, I found out. And especially as a long arm quilter. But I did the same thing. And so it was, that was a challenge for me as well. I've sewn my whole life, clothes, but to do quilting, it was just totally different, just a new ball game. So I actually bought my first long arm in 2005 because I knew I loved that. So I purchased my new long arm. They delivered it, set it up, and man, as soon as they left, I was on it. So I had a quilt already ready, and I went to town on it. Well, with the machine actually came one lesson, and the lesson was actually how to load the quilt and how to do a pantograph or edge to edge, back to back, whatever you want to call it. It's an all over design, and you follow with a laser light um, how you put the design on the quilt. So that's the only lesson I ever had when I first got my long arm. Well, I love edge to edge. Don't get me wrong. It's amazing, especially if you're going to be using a quilt a lot. Um, that is the way to go because you're going to be washing it and using it. It's going to get a lot of wear on it. So it's a cheaper way actually to get it quilted and a faster way also. So, but if you want it custom and that's what you want to do, you can do that as well. But I was more into the custom end of it because of all the quilts that I saw at the Dallas show, how beautiful they were, the feathers, the just all the motifs. It was just absolutely beautiful. So that's where I wanted to go. So I made a quilt and before they delivered my machine, so I'd have one ready. And I got to tell you, looking at it now, and I'm going to show it to you here in a few minutes, but the piecing on it, everything about it is wrong. So I've learned over the years how to piece a proper quilt, but the correct way. So, anyways, I loaded that. Well, when I got home from my first lesson, I thought, oh no, um, how was I supposed to load this? Because most long arm machines, they have three poles and with leaders on them, and you've got to pin your backing and backing on both ends. You've got to pin your top. And I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to wing it and see if I can do it. Well, I think I did. I think I did it right because it worked out for me. So I got it loaded. But I got to tell you, that it was not easy. It was not easy. I'm not going to lie to you. It was not easy. I had to learn how to guide that machine and how to make the motifs that I wanted for this quilt. So I just had to, I had my grandmother in the back of my head, though, is telling me to relax and don't watch the needle. That's where I got that from. She was a professional seamstress who sewed for movie stars, and who would know better? But she sewed on a regular domestic machine. She never used a long arm. So I thought, well, this probably applies to this as well, to the long arm. So I practiced that, and yeah, it worked. So I loaded it and I practiced. And but before I did that, I doodled on paper. And I suggest anytime you want to do a motif, even if you're experienced and you want to put a new motif on that you've never done before, practice that on paper. And I've got to tell you, that's all I did was in the evenings is practice on paper so that I could get these motifs down in my head, which were simple motifs like cross hatching. Well, cross hatching you use a ruler, so it's a little bit easier. But the feathers, doing the feathers, that was a tough one for me at first. But the more I practiced, the better it got. The more I relaxed, the better it got. The less I watched the needle, the better it got. So I just went from there and I just kept on going. Then I started creating my own feathers and different things. And that's what you need to do is just, use your imagination. If you have something here that you want to put on your quilt, just practice it on paper and then practice it on a quilt or just fabric. Throw fabric on your quilt. So the feathers were not pretty, and I'm going to show them to you right now. So let's see if we can get a good picture of this. This was my first quilt, and it was actually a sunbonnet Sue that my mother-in-law had, and I just kind of took the sunbonnet Sues and put it together. But those are my feathers, and I don't know that you can make them out or not. But you know what? They are not pretty feathers. I can tell you that right now. But I didn't stop. I kept going. I learned from these feathers what I needed to do to make them look better. And it didn't happen in a day. It didn't happen in 2 days. You have to keep practicing. I did some cross hatching. Let me see if I can get that here. Cross hatching. Where is my cross? There it is. Okay, I did some cross hatching right here. Now, this is 1/4" cross hatch. For your very first time, my very first time to use a ruler, I did 1/4" cross hatch. I don't advise it because you really don't have another line on your ruler to go by. So on these rulers, they have all these lines here. This was my very first straight edge ruler, and you just line up the edge to the stitch line that you did, and some of those are way off because I didn't have another line to go by. And if you use a straight edge ruler and you do cross hatching, you'll understand what I'm talking about. So learning from that, I don't ever do 1/4" crosshatch anymore. I think 1/2" crosshatch is beautiful, absolutely beautiful. You can do so many things inside every other one if you want to. I'm a very, very heavy quilter. I just love it. There are some people that are not, and that is totally okay. That is totally okay. In fact, I have quilted light custom, and but I'm always like, well, this side over here, this area here needs to have more quilting. But, you know, I have to hold myself back sometimes when I'm doing light custom quilting. But, you know, you have to find what works best for you. So anyway, so the 1/4 inch cross hatching, I think I only did it one other time after that. But I mean, 1/2 inch cross hatching, that's the smallest I go. You can go 3/4, 1/2 inch, you can even go 2 inch if you want, if you have a ruler that has the registration lines to be able to do that. So, but don't forget, if you're using a ruler, put your ruler base on. So, okay, so after I quilted that quilt, which I had so many issues with, and at the time I was thinking, this is so ugly, and my feathers are not good, my cross hatching is not good. I even did straight lines in there because I was so tired of cross hatching that was not good as well. So, but I took it to my guild and I did show and tell. Hey, why not? so so don't, you know, if you quilt something, you know, you're going to be the only one that's going to pick out all the little imperfections, which really aren't. So everybody's going to look at it as a whole. And that's what everybody did. Oh, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. So so I did the show and tell. I was not impressed with my quilting, but everybody else was. So, you know, that was a lot of encouragement to me, because I felt like, you know, I can go further with this. I can perfect that. All I have to do is practice, and that's what it's all about. You have to practice too. So, so I just took it and ran with it. You know, after that, I started getting customer quilts after that. My first customer quilt, I'll talk about that a little bit. But my first customer quilt was, it was very simple and it was pieced. And I thought, first thing I thought, and actually even to this day is, oh, how am I going to quilt this? But in the very beginning, when I first started custom quilting for other people, um, I just went over and over. How am I going to quilt this? What is going to look good on this? And I mean, you can rack your brain and rack your brain and over again. And after years of doing that, I finally decided, you know what? I'm not even going to look at the quilt. I'm going to put it on my machine when I get ready to quilt it. And then I'm going to decide what I'm going to do with it. Because that very first quilt took so long to do. And guess what I did to it? I I know that I did some cross hatching in some of the blocks because they were very busy fabrics. And I think I did orange peel in it, using a ruler. But I mean, it took me longer to decide what I was going to do than it did to actually quilt it. So what I'm trying to say is first gut instinct, go with it. Just go with it. And don't pick the stitches out. After you're done with the quilt, you can go back and say, hey, I'm going to pick these stitches out in this area because it just didn't turn out right, you know. But you know what? After it's washed, especially if it's going to be used, it's not going to matter. You're not going to know. So just go with it. That's all I have to say. So I got more and more customers after that, and I got better and better. And then people started putting their quilts in shows, and they started winning ribbons, and you know, on and on and on. And you know, if you're not into custom quilting or even show quilts, that's fine. That is totally fine. But they were other people's quilts and they put them in shows, so I didn't have any say over it. Um, I would never at that time put one of mine in a show, but this one behind me, this one's mine. And it was many years after I think it was like 10 years after I was into quilting that I actually quilted this one. And I did put it in a show, and it won Best of Show in the Plano show in Texas. And so, I was happy with that. Um, Won honorable mention in the Dallas show, and I was happy with that. You can't ever expect to win every time. Um, but if you don't want to put your quilts in shows, there's nothing wrong with that. If you just want to quilt and have fun and give your quilts to family members, friends, or whatever, that's fun too, because they're all going to love them. Probably more than you do. That's how I feel sometimes. So, if you have enjoyed this, like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and check out my website, Jackie's Machine Quilting. And thank you so much for joining me.